we're a ways out from the actual trophies being awarded. But since all the award nominees have been announced, let's take a look at them as a whole. So that's why I've been mentioning them in the occasional news video, but not all of them. So people are thinking, Shannon didn't mention that award. Now we're here. The Hart nominees came out, and Crosby for the Penguins, Kucherov for Tampa, and McDavid for the Oilers have been announced. So I'm going to use my little marker here and denote which ones I think are probably going to win and why. Kucherov, I think, wins this award. But you know what's interesting is Crosby being in the top three makes sense. McDavid flies in the face of something that was said by Brian Burke. Brian Burke said that he talked to GMs, and all GMs said basically, in order to be qualified for the Hart, you kind of have to have made the playoffs. So it's surprising that McDavid's in here. And to me, Ovechkin's the most obvious example of a guy who should be in the top three. The Washington Capitals win that division. Without Ovechkin, they don't. And it's just weird to me that McDavid's in there. I don't think he wins it. I think it goes to Kucherov. If McDavid were to win this award, we'll have to rethink how the whole thing's done. And then it's just, it's weird. And I know people are going to say, well, without McDavid, the Oilers would have been even worse. But they were just not a very good team to start with. So it is strange. It is very, very unusual that somebody's nominated top three for the Hart without being in the playoffs. That's why McDavid wasn't in the top three last year. And we'll see. But I think Kucherov probably gets it. Tampa's going to win a lot of hardware this year, just not the trophy they really wanted. Norris Trophy winner, you got Burns of the Sharks, Giordano of the Flames, Hedman of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I honestly think Giordano. That being said, Brent Burns and those 83 points, it does make him a threat. Hedman, I think, is third on the list. I think Hedman being top three is kind of a surprise for me. Only because I thought there were other guys who probably should have been in the conversation, like, obviously, the Capitals. Carlson. The Capitals really kind of get hosed in the trophies this year. They had a pretty good season. They finished first in their division. But according to the voters, they don't have anybody who deserved top three billing. The Rocket Richard Trophy goes to the aforementioned Ovechkin because it has to, because he was the number one goal scorer in the league. But, here we are. So I think Giordano probably wins the Norris. Now, the Vezina Trophy, you got Bishop, you got Leonard, you got Vasilevsky. I think it probably goes to Vasi. I think he had the best overall season of the three. That being said, this is a crazy season. Leonard probably shouldn't be underestimated in this. And if Leonard wins it again, we'll have to reevaluate how many games a goaltender has to play before they get Vezina into the Vezina conversation, which Vegas fans from last year would rightfully have a complaint about when it comes to Marc-Andre Fleury. Marc-Andre Fleury did not get into the top three. And the thinking was by many, myself included, he was injured for a pretty decent portion of the season, therefore didn't play enough games to get that consideration. I was surprised at who ended up getting into this. And even as a Dallas fan, I was surprised Bishop got into the top three. So maybe that thinking is changing, or maybe it's just this year and it'll change back next year that you need to play 55 games or more to really get into the conversation for the Vezina. Calder, Binnington, Dahlin, and Pettersson. Pettersson's the obvious choice. That being said, with McDavid as a Hart Trophy nominee and Leonard and Bishop being in the Vezina conversation, who knows, might be bizarre world. Maybe Jordan Binnington ends up getting the Calder as Rookie of the Year, despite him not playing very many games, compared to, say, where you'd normally have to end up for somebody to say, okay, you're Rookie of the Year. He played about half the season. And Dahlin is the wild card for me. I honestly think that Rasmus Dahlin doesn't get talked about enough. He had an excellent season for Buffalo. I would argue he was their best defenseman overall this season, and that's as a teenager. So he came in and played very, very well. And I've seen people say, well, look where he was drafted, of course. Yeah, I could mention Chris Pronger. I could mention Scott Stevens. I could mention Chris Chelios. I could mention any number of Hall of Fame defensemen that in their first year weren't what they would become. Even Hedman his first year and his second year. Second year Hedman was terrible the first half of the season, and then he really turned things around after that. So, to just throw it and say, well, of course these defensemen coming in are good now because look where they're drafted. Defensemen traditionally have struggled, and I have a Hall of Fame book here, and I might just go through it and point out a lot of Hall of Fame defensemen that had tough rookie years, at least statistically, and Dahlin wasn't one of them. So for me, he should be more than a dark horse, and if he played in Toronto, I think he'd be the runaway winner with the award, but because he played in Buffalo, he likely ends up finishing second or third in the voting. The Ted Lindsay Award, this is for outstanding player. So I've said this is the NHLPA saying here's the best player in the league. People said no, it's outstanding player. Okay, so you got a bunch of guys out playing, let's just say soccer in the field. Who's the best player out there? Billy. Billy's pretty good. Yeah, but who's the most outstanding? Billy. Billy's pretty good. So to me, they're two different versions of the same idea. Either way, this is the NHLPA's vote, and it came down to Kane, Kucherov, and McDavid. Two of the names are the same, and I'm going out on a limb and saying that Connor McDavid wins it because it is basically a widely held belief that Connor McDavid is a level above everybody else right now, and that includes Sid the Kid, and that includes Kucherov. Kucherov had more points. Likely was seen as the most valuable player to a team that made the playoffs. But your best overall player in the NHL, Connor McDavid, makes total sense to me. And he had a great year. So I think Connor probably wins this award. And I think it's his. As long as he plays a minimum of, I'll say, 70 games in a season, I don't think NHL players vote for anybody, not Connor. And I think it was funny that when I was talking about the poll of what NHL hockey players... who NHL players thought were the best defensemen, goaltender, and everything. There were a lot of comments like, "Well, what do they know? They don't watch hockey like we. What do they know?" And I'm like, I think they'd know. I honestly, it's so weird because people will throw shade at me like, "Well, Shannon didn't play in the National Hockey League, so what does he know?" All right, granted. But when people are saying, "Oh, well, here's what the NHL hockey players say," then it's, "Well, what do they know? They're hockey players." Yeah, it's one of those things that my brain sort of short circuits, and then I wander off into music of Rammstein and Slipknot and everything until I come back feeling better. Now, Selkie Award. This is where it gets interesting because Bergeron's always in the running. And again, this year, I didn't know that Bergeron necessarily did enough for me or played long enough that I thought he should have been number one on this list. And I don't think he wins it. He could, because it's very easy to look at Bergeron in any given game and say, that's one fantastic forward. He's up against O'Reilly and Stone. But I honestly think that Mark Stone is going to be taking home that hardware. I do. I think it's Stone's. I think Bergeron's fantastic, but I think Stone was just on his own level. Both in Ottawa and then after getting to Vegas. And once he's in Vegas, much like I said with Dahlin, in Vegas, he gets the bigger stage. More people see what he's doing. And it's more accepted and respected. And I saw Ottawa fans saying, well, wait, he was playing that way for us too. Why weren't people talking about it then? Because he was in Ottawa, the location of the tire fire. So once he got out of that, he got into an organization that's more covered, and everybody saw him. Everybody's like, this guy's fantastic. And so I think he wins the award. Lady Byng, so this is for gentlemanly play. Barkov, Monahan, and O'Reilly. And my money's on Barkov because Barkov had 8 assists. One of the cleanest numbers you can imagine for a guy who plays so many hard minutes. And the way he plays, so strong on the puck, and his takeaway numbers, the fact that he's not hooking, slashing, holding the whole way through, that's insane. So Barkov, for me, Lady Byng winner. I don't see how it couldn't go to him. Both Monahan and O'Reilly had, I believe, 12 penalty minutes each. So he had the lowest number, and I think he played harder minutes than Monahan. And I know O'Reilly plays some of those minutes as well, but for me, it's Barkov. Masterton. So this is tough. This is for, dedication to hockey and just your overall inspirational story of the year. You got Nick Foligno in Columbus, Robin Lehner with the Islanders, and Joe Thornton with San Jose. It's a tough call. It is. But I think that the resurrection of Lehner's career this year has been nothing short of miraculous. It has been just amazing watching him take that next step as a member of the Islanders and finally become that goaltender that the Ottawa Senators thought he was going to be when they had him in their system. And that was the reason why when Ottawa got rid of him and kept Anderson, I thought they were crazy. I thought that Leonard was a really good young goaltender, and that the Senators would regret losing him. And the Islanders very happy to have him, and we'll see what happens with his contract after this season is over. And so I think he wins that. Now for Adams Award, this is the one where everybody's going to get hot under the collar. You've got Berube, Cooper, and Trotz. And Cooper being up for this, and we're all going to remember how the playoffs for these guys ended, right? And Cooper kind of being stone-faced behind the bench when he should have been upset. He should have been showing some emotion, and they should have been adapting. Adapt to what's going on the other side of the ice. I think, and I know Babcock takes this too from the Toronto media, there's a line there, and I think coaches don't want to cross it. You want to show your players you have faith in them. So if you leave your lines intact, you leave your strategies intact, you're telling your players, I have faith that you guys can turn this around. And the idea being from a coach who think that way, if I make alterations based on what they're doing, it shows them that it's working. My counter argument would be when you're down 2-0 in a series, it is working, you're going to want to change things. But I do understand why somebody coached that way. I don't think that Cooper was helped by the in-game interviews with Pierre Maguire. And if I was a coach in the NHL, I would definitely be wanting to tell the National Hockey League, I don't want a microphone in my face when I'm supposed to be coaching the guys during the game. In between periods, sure, I guess I can pause for 10 seconds to talk to somebody with a microphone in my face. During the game, no. And I do believe that. I'm confused by coaches giving interviews during the game. I know there's people who really enjoy it. I know Rod Brendamore's given some great sound bites. But I honestly, I just find it baffling. Because as a coach, you know, especially when the play's going on, it's just weird to me. Cause I'm like, there's play going on while they're talking to each other. Anyways, that set aside, I think it's Trotz's award to lose. I know there's going to be people saying, where's Bill Peters? I know. Rod Brindamore, good example. Yep. Rick Tocchet, sure. But Berube took a team that was at the bottom of the league in January, and they got in the playoffs. Cooper won 62 games in the regular season. This does not take into account the playoffs. And Trotz, coach of the year, because he took an Islanders team that was the worst in the league defensively and brought them to first. And the way he did that was by getting everybody to buy into the system. You talk to Islanders in interviews, they will tell you, we bought in, we're a team, we all play as a team, we're all accountable. And as long as you can get players to buy into that, it's great. When there's players who go, yeah, that's not my job, I'm not accountable for that, that's when you have a problem. That's when players kind of tune the coach out. And sometimes you see the coach go, and sometimes it's not the coach's fault. But there you go. My predictions, I did not predict the King Clancy or the Mark Messier Awards because those ones, to me, I don't have enough information, and I don't think those are awards that I can necessarily say, oh, this guy's been better in his community than that guy. Oh, this guy's a better leader than that. I'm not getting into that. So I'm just going with these awards, this 9. Let me know your thoughts and your picks in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.